Everyone thinks Modern Warfare 2 is ruined because the minimap doesn't show enemy markers when shooting unsilenced weapons. While most people hate this change, I don't mind it. Since the beta, I've been playing Modern Warfare, Cold War, and Vanguard. I found myself rarely ever using the minimap to see where enemies were, unless my team was using streaks to reveal their location. The minimap still contains a lot of crucial information, and if you're a smart player, you should be able to tell where the enemy team is spawning, because they should be on the opposite side of the map from your own. In theory. Would I prefer red dots when enemies shoot without silencers? Of course. It makes the game a lot easier for attentive players. Personally, I don't care if the minimap works the classic way or the Modern Warfare way, but the reason Infinity Ward chose for defending this version of the minimap is we don't want to punish players for using their weapons. Excuse me, that's half the fun of the game. You go to where the action is, and your actions have consequences. If you shoot around a lot of enemy players, they're going to go towards you. That's how it's always been. There's lots of players out there that play without headsets, so their directional audio cues aren't as accurate, so when they hear gunshots, they just know an enemy's in their general location. They can't pinpoint exactly where they are. And that's where the minimap comes in. Something people are forgetting with this beta is even though we're giving feedback, Infinity Ward doesn't have to change a single thing. Would it be smart to listen, especially if it's something a majority of players want? Hell yeah. Just like in this case, if they choose not to listen, they could at least be mature enough to stand up for their decisions and explain their reasoning. There's no way protecting players is the reason for this minimap change. I don't think the minimap and the way it functions this year is the issue. It's just how Infinity Ward is handling this matter. You shouldn't need the minimap to be a crutch while you're playing this game. The audio is so good in it, you're always able to hear where the enemies are, because the footsteps, once again, are loud in this game. But just the same way you can hear the enemies, they can also hear you. I don't know how to make this make sense, but the footstep audio has been very tasteful so far. I like having to be aware of the enemy hearing my footsteps, as long as it doesn't slow down the pace of play. I want to use my footsteps to draw the enemies towards me the same way where, interestingly enough, the same way shooting unsilenced weapon in older Call of Duty games would draw enemies towards you because they would look at their mini-map. Thankfully this year, it doesn't sound like you're walking around like a bull in a china shop, unlike Modern Warfare, and they've already lowered the footstep audio based on the feedback from the first 2 beta weekends, so hopefully, by the time this game launches, the footstep audio should be really balanced. Dr. Disrespect won't have to scream "where's the audio" this year because the directional audio from my experience is as flawless as I could imagine. That's another reason I don't mind the minimap change is when enemies shoot unsuppressed or suppressed weapons, you can still tell where they are without having to use that crutch minimap. Slide canceling has been removed and the community is polarized. My first few games of the beta, I found myself trying to slide cancel everywhere I go because my inner movement king was trying to possess me. Once I got used to not being able to slide cancel, I loved the movement of the game. And this is going to make a lot of people upset, and it's a hot take. I'm glad slide canceling has been removed, even though in Cold War, Vanguard, and Modern Warfare, I used to slide cancel everywhere. The Actman said it best. Yeah, it's neat. It's cool. Congrats on learning how to do it, but I don't want to have to. There is going to be a lot of people upset because they can't use movement exploits to win gunfights anymore. It's going to take strategy and gun skill to be successful now. I already know what the movement kings and queens are going to say.
By removing slide canceling, you remove the only skill gap in Call of Duty.
I'm sorry, but only people with a lower IQ than a mushroom think like that. Everyone will still be able to rush around the map like a chicken with their head cut off and still win every gunfight that they get into. All it takes is a little brain power, strategy, and gun skill. This change of removing slide canceling is barely going to change how the game plays anyway. The movement kings and queens are still going to be able to spam YY, they're going to be able to bunny hop around corners, and I'm sure at some point there's going to be a form of slide canceling, even if it's just a partial slide cancel. I'm not against slide canceling. I do it all the time. I just don't want it in Modern Warfare 2. It's not that big of a deal. What is really entertaining is seeing how much people get upset because it's no longer in the game. Alright, get your pitchforks out. Dead silence isn't a perk this year, and I'm okay with it. As I said earlier, I want enemies to hear my footsteps because it will draw them into gunfights with me. As long as they can't hear me coming from a mile away, perfect. Hopefully by the full release of the game, they will have footsteps audio balanced perfectly. Will it probably happen? No. If this was any other Call of Duty, yes. Have it as a perk, just like Ninja in Cold War. Dead Silence can't be a perk this year because of how broken and overpowered it would be. Everyone would run it. No one would ever hear any footsteps, and that would make everyone want to camp since you would never know when there's enemies around you. To make things work, footstep audio needs to be balanced. If footstep audio is too loud, then the balance shifts the other way. Everyone would be camping for the opposite reason because footsteps are too loud, and the entire map would know exactly where you are. Lots of people are timid with this year's game being filled with campers, just like Modern Warfare. And rightfully so. With the minimap, movement, and audio changes, there's a huge incentive to camp. Breaking news alert, another hot take. Camping's a completely valid playstyle and in all capitals, but the game's design shouldn't favor this playstyle over any other. I did experience my fair share of campers in the beta. The map design this year definitely helps. There's a lot less places that rats can hide. Other than that, there's not a lot of things that are in place to help people combat campers. Except for the new perk system. And by the way, I shouldn't have to be the person to tell you, camping will always be a part of Call of Duty. Here's how it works. Everyone spawns in with 2 perks, and throughout the time progression of a match, you will unlock a 3rd and eventually a 4th perk. After a few days of negative feedback with this new perk system, Infinity Ward decided to decrease the amount of time it took to unlock your 3rd and 4th perk. At that point, I don't understand why they didn't let us spawn in with 3 or 4 perks anyway, especially since you would unlock your 4th perk near the beginning of the match anyway. I don't like this new change at all, and I spent a lot of time thinking philosophically. There was only one reason I could reasonably come up with why the perks function like this. They must have gotten really lazy and let an 8-year-old come up with this idea. I will never understand why they didn't go with the classic 3 perk system where all the perks are put into categories and you just balance them so you can't have all the most overpowered perks at the same time. Or if they were too scared of players having too many overpowered perks at one time, they could have done what COD Ghost did. Each perk has a value based on how beneficial it was to the player. The better the benefit, the more it would cost. There was also a limit on how many perk tokens you could use on your class. That way you couldn't run a lot of the most overpowered perks at the same time. It makes sense. More freedom, more choice, more balance. Simple. That's in case they didn't want to go with the classic perk system. The only benefit to perks this year, other than being limited to 4 and having a time restriction, you can run any perk you like. All players unlock their 3rd and 4th perks at the same time, so for those people camping, you know when they unlock Ghost versus when they don't have it yet. So you can use that to your advantage while using UAVs. That's the only benefit I can think of. It's just a silly decision, and I don't understand why they couldn't have come up with a better system to find more balance when it comes to perk choice. There is nothing based about skill-based matchmaking. Also, don't play a drinking game and take a shot every time I say it, because you'll die of alcohol poisoning. I'm all for skill-based matchmaking when it comes to games with a large skill gap, like Rocket League or Valorant. But the last time I checked, this is a Call of Duty game. There is absolutely no reason for skill-based matchmaking to be as strong as it was in the beta. It's a beta. Yet, every game I played, it was like a ranked match. The first time I played Modern Warfare 2, me and my friends got so frustrated with how annoying the lobbies were, we left and we went and played Warzone. I came back the next day and got used to everything, but it was not a good first impression. As the weekend progressed, just across the board, not only in my experience, it seemed like everyone stopped being put into CDL tryouts. I've been saying this for a while. SBMM is fine, as long as it's not strict in a casual setting. Ranked play? I'm all for some sweaty lobbies. And please, with skill-based matchmaking, have a distinguishable way to the players where we can clearly see what rank we are playing in, even if it's in a casual setting. It's not complicated. Rocket League, League of Legends, CSGO, and a bunch of other games have had this figured out for years. It's not rocket science. Blah, blah, blah. We've all heard it a million times how horribly Call of Duty runs its matchmaking. It's gotten so repetitive, and I have no clue why they haven't even addressed it once. Gunplay feels great. I like that the guns have more recoil than we are used to this year. That way we're not just living on repeat and having every gun in Call of Duty shoot like a complete laser. It was a welcome change to have equipped a bunch of recoil mitigating attachments and still not be 100% accurate. Now please, Call of Duty, as much as I like this change, don't go overboard. This is the most recoil you could have in the game with it still being enjoyable. You're on the edge of the Goldilocks zone. Don't mess it up. The gunsmith is incredible. I was really confused going into the beta weekend, especially with how it was explained to us in COD Next, and the UI did not help us at all. I have no idea how they screwed up the menu user interface so badly, but it genuinely took me 2 minutes to find out how to find a match. The message of the day was the only thing I saw on my screen. Everyone makes jokes about how the Call of Duty menu is the same every year, but there's a reason it's the same every year. It's because it's simple and it works. It takes a couple minutes in the customization category to figure out how the weapon trees work this year, and let me tell you, I love this idea. I thought going into the beta that these weapon trees were going to be a fancy version of how you could put in different caliber rounds in Modern Warfare, Cold War, and Vanguard, and it would slightly change the weapon. That's what I was expecting. I'm glad I was wrong. I don't know how this is going to affect camo grinding or weapon challenges. That doesn't matter to me. There's going to be so much to explore and so much content for us to experience when it comes to gunplay, which is the main focus of Call of Duty. When it comes to this customization, W's across the board for me. In conclusion, I liked the game and had a fun experience. The maps were great, everything was colorful and vibrant, and most issues that we had with Modern Warfare have been improved upon or completely fixed. Day 1 of the beta was not a good experience, 1 out of 10. When I came back and gave it a second try, I was having a lot of fun, and if I had to put a numerical value to it, an 8 out of 10. Overall, it was a 7 out of 10 experience for me. I'm really excited to see what the rest of the game has to offer. Will this be a top 5 COD of all time? Who knows? Should you run and get your mother's credit card and pre-order this game? That's up to you. Oh, yeah. And my Discord really seems to enjoy the game.